The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of Kepler Station as Commander Jake Morrison rushed to the communications center. The duty officer looked pale as he handed Jake the emergency headset. Static filled the speakers, broken by screams, and the sound of metal being torn apart. "This is Theta 7 mining colony calling for immediate help," a panicked voice came through the noise. "They came out of nowhere. The outer walls are breached. We have massive casualties and—" The transmission cut to harsh static for several seconds before the voice returned, barely a whisper. "Oh God, the wolves are here. The wolves are here. They're in the main corridor." The signal died completely. Jake stared at the silent speaker, his heart pounding. In his 15 years of service, he had never heard such terror in a human voice. The mention of wolves made his blood run cold. Everyone in the galaxy knew what that meant. "Sir?" Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez appeared beside him, her dark eyes wide with concern. "Was that really from Theta 7? Jake nodded grimly. "Get Dr. Ben Carter and Dr. Lisa Grant to the bridge immediately. Tell them to pack emergency gear. We're leaving for Theta 7 within the hour." Amy hesitated. "Sir, if the Fenrir are really there, shouldn't we wait for a full battle fleet? Standard protocol says—" "Protocol says to run and hope they don't follow us," Jake interrupted. "But there might be survivors who need help. I won't abandon them." Within 30 minutes, the exploration vessel HFY Horizon was ready for departure. Jake stood on the small bridge watching his crew prepare for what might be their last mission. Amy checked the navigation systems while Dr. Ben Carter loaded medical supplies. Dr. Lisa Grant carried cases filled with scanning equipment, her face set with determination despite the fear in her eyes. The Horizon was not a warship. It carried only basic defensive weapons and was designed for exploration and rescue missions. Against the legendary Fenrir pack hunters, it would be like fighting a hurricane with a paper fan. But Jake had made his decision as they traveled through hyperspace toward Theta 7. Jake gathered his crew in the small meeting room. "I want everyone to understand what we might face out there," he began. "The Fenrir have been terrorizing the galaxy for over 200 years. They're 8 feet tall, incredibly strong, and have claws that can cut through battle armor like it's paper." Ben shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I've read the reports. No one has ever survived a direct encounter with them. They work in packs, coordinate their attacks, and leave no witnesses. They're not just animals," Lisa added quietly. "Intelligence reports suggest they use advanced technology, but no one knows how advanced because everyone who sees it dies." Jake looked at each of his crew members. "I know this is dangerous. If anyone wants to transfer to another ship when we get back, I'll understand. But right now, Theta 7 might have people hiding in bunkers or sealed sections. We might be their only hope." Amy straightened in her chair. "We're with you, Commander. All of us." The others nodded agreement, though Jake could see the fear they were trying to hide. He felt the same fear but pushed it down. Fear was natural when facing the unknown, but it couldn't control their actions. 2 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace near Theta 7. The mining colony hung in space like a broken toy. Huge gashes marked the outer hull, and several sections had been completely torn away. Emergency lights flickered weakly in some areas, but most of the station was dark. "Life signs?" Jake asked. Lisa worked at her scanner console for several minutes before shaking her head. "Nothing. No life signs anywhere on the station." Ben studied the damage through the view screen. "Look at those claw marks. They're enormous. And the way the metal is torn. It's like something incredibly strong just ripped it apart with its bare hands." Jake ordered the Horizon to dock with the least damaged section of the station. They put on protective suits and entered through an emergency airlock. The corridors inside were worse than the external damage suggested. Blood stained the walls and floors. Equipment lay scattered and broken. In some places, the metal walls showed deep scratch marks that could only have been made by massive claws. "This is systematic," Lisa observed as they moved deeper into the station. "Look at the pattern of destruction. They hit the communications center first, then the weapon storage, then the living quarters. This wasn't random violence. They found the bodies in the main cafeteria. 43 miners and their families had barricaded themselves in the large room. The reinforced doors had been torn apart, but not quickly. Claw marks showed that the Fenrir had taken their time, possibly enjoying the fear of those trapped. Inside. Amy turned away from the scene, her face green. Ben knelt beside the bodies, his medical training taking over despite the horror. These wounds, they're precise, almost surgical. Like the attackers knew exactly where to strike for quick kills. Jake studied the damage to the doors and walls. Something bothered him about the attack pattern, but he couldn't quite identify what it was. The Fenrir were supposed to be savage beasts, but this showed planning and restraint. They had been efficient, not wasteful. An alarm sounded from their ship. Lisa ran to check her portable scanner while Jake activated his communicator. Amy's voice came through clearly from the Horizon's bridge. "Commander, you need to see this. Long-range sensors are picking up a large ship heading for the Meridian system. The energy signature matches descriptions of Fenrir vessels." Jake felt ice form in his stomach. Meridian was home to 12 worlds and over 50 million people. If the Fenrir reached there with the same efficiency they had shown at Theta 7, it would be the largest massacre in galactic history. "How long until they reach Meridian?" he asked. "At their current speed, approximately 18 hours. Jake looked around at the destruction surrounding them. 43 people had died here, and there had been nothing anyone could do to save them. But 50 million people still had a chance if someone was willing to act. "Amy, prepare for immediate departure. Set course to intercept that Fenrir ship." The silence that followed told Jake his crew thought he had lost his mind. No one intercepted Fenrir ships. The smart move was to run as fast as possible in the opposite direction. But as Jake looked at the claw marks on the walls, something nagged at his memory. Something about the patterns reminded him of stories his grandfather had told about wolves back on Earth. Real wolves. Not the space monsters everyone feared. Maybe it was time someone tried talking to the wolves instead of just running from them. The user Horizon raced through space toward the asteroid belt where their sensors had detected the Fenrir ship. Jake stood on the bridge, watching the main screen as a massive dark shape slowly came into view. The alien vessel looked nothing like any ship he had ever seen. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of their small exploration craft. The hull appeared to be grown rather than built, with twisted organic curves that reminded Jake of tree roots. Red lights pulsed along its surface like a heartbeat, and strange tendrils extended from various points, moving slowly as if the ship was alive. "That thing gives me nightmares just looking at it," Ben muttered from his position at the medical station. Amy checked her instruments again. "It's definitely heading for Meridian. At this speed, they'll reach the outer planets in 16 hours. Lisa worked frantically at her science console. "I'm detecting massive energy readings from that ship. Whatever weapons they have, they could level entire cities." Jake took a deep breath. Every instinct told him to turn around and run. Every piece of military training said that approaching a Fenrir ship was suicide. But he thought about the 50 million people in the Meridian system who had no idea death was coming their way. "Open all communication channels," he ordered. Amy stared at him in shock. "Sir, no one has ever successfully communicated with the Fenrir. They don't respond to any known language or signal pattern." "Then we'll be the first to try something different," Jake replied. "Send the signal on all frequencies, audio and visual." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of equipment. Everyone knew this moment would either make history or end their lives. The communication array sent signals in every known galactic language, along with mathematical sequences and peaceful greeting patterns. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the main screen flickered and changed. A massive creature appeared on the screen, and everyone on the bridge took an involuntary step backward. The being was clearly the source of the Fenrir legends. It stood over 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur with streaks of silver. Its eyes glowed yellow in the dim light of its ship, and when it opened its mouth, rows of sharp teeth gleamed white. But what shocked Jake most was the intelligence in those yellow eyes. This was not a mindless beast. This creature was thinking, evaluating, deciding. The creature spoke in a deep, rumbling voice that the translation system struggled to process. After a few seconds, words began to appear on the screen while a mechanical voice provided audio translation. I am Grimfang, Alpha of the Northern Pack. Why do you small creatures not flee as all others do? Are you broken in your minds? Jake stepped forward, his heart pounding but his voice steady. I am Commander Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel Horizon. We came to talk, not to fight. Grimfang tilted his massive head, clearly puzzled by this response. Talk? No one talks to us. They run or they die. These are the only choices we give. Maybe it's time for a third choice, Jake replied. We found the mining station you attacked. We saw what you did there. The creature's eyes narrowed dangerously. The miners fought. They died quickly for their bravery. This is the way of things. Jake studied Grimfang's expression and body language. Something about the way the creature held himself, the tone of his voice reminded Jake of documentary footage he had seen of Volf packs on Earth. There was a hierarchy here, a structure that went beyond simple violence. You're heading for Meridian, Jake said. 50 million people live there, families, children. Food is scarce, Grimfang replied without emotion. The pack must eat, the pack must survive. The cold statement sent chills through everyone on the bridge, but Jake noticed something important. Grimfang had said must survive, not wants to kill. There was a difference, and it might be crucial. Your pack is hungry, Jake said carefully. You attack colonies because you need food and resources to live. Grimfang studied Jake through the screen for a long moment. You understand more than the others. Yes, we hunt because we must. Our homeworld died long ago. We travel between stars, taking what we need to keep our people alive. Lisa stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Your ship ... It's not just a vessel, is it? It's a habitat. You live on it permanently. The bioships are our only homes now, Grimfang confirmed. They provide air, water, and shelter, but they cannot provide food for a growing pack. Jake felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. How long have you been traveling between worlds? 3 of your centuries, Grimfang answered. Since the Great Fire consumed our world and forced us to flee? Ben whispered urgently to Jake. Commander, we're talking about refugees, not conquerors. They're not attacking colonies for conquest. They're doing it to survive. Jake nodded slowly. The Fenrir were nomads, driven from their home and forced to live as wanderers. Their attacks on colonies weren't acts of evil, but acts of desperation. It didn't excuse the deaths they had caused, but it explained them. How many are in your pack? Jake asked. 2,000 warriors, 3,000 cubs and elders, Grimfang replied. All who remain of the northern pack. 5,000 beings living. On that single ship, Jake realized. No wonder they needed to raid colonies for supplies. Any group that size would consume enormous amounts of food and resources. Amy grabbed Jake's arm and whispered, Sir, long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships approaching fast. It's the Meridian Defense Fleet? Jake looked at the tactical display. 20 warships were converging on their position, led by the heavy cruiser Defender. The Meridian forces had detected the Fenrir ship and were coming to destroy it. Grimfang, Jake said urgently, a large fleet is approaching. They intend to attack your ship. The creature's expression shifted to something Jake recognized as grim satisfaction. Let them come. We have destroyed fleets before. Our bioweapons will send them to the void. Wait, Jake said quickly. What if there was another way? What? If your pack didn't have to fight anymore? Grimfang leaned closer to the screen, his yellow eyes boring into Jake's. What do you mean, small human? What if we could find you a new home? A world where your pack could live without having to attack others for food? For the first time since the conversation began, Grimfang looked uncertain. No one has ever offered such a thing. Why would you? Jake thought of the Badas at Theta 7. Then of the families living peacefully on Meridian's worlds. Because everyone deserves a chance to live without fear. Your people and ours? The Fenrir Alpha was quiet for a long moment. Around him, Jake could see other pack members gathering, watching the conversation with intense interest. Finally, Grimfang spoke. "You speak of impossible things, human Jake Morrison. But your words are not like the others. You show no fear, and you offer hope instead of threats." The tactical alarm sounded as the Meridian fleet drew closer. In minutes, this fragile first contact would become a battle that could destroy any chance of peace. "Will you trust me?" Jake asked. "Will you let me try to find another way?" Grimfang stared at him for what felt like an eternity before nodding. Slowly, "You have courage, small human. We will listen to your words, but if you betray us, your death will not be quick." Jake nodded grimly as the enemy fleet appeared on their sensors. Now he had to convince both sides to hold their fire long. Enough to attempt something that had never been tried before in galactic history. The Meridian defense fleet dropped out of hyperspace in attack formation. 20 warships surrounded the area where the UES Horizon floated between the massive Fenrir bioship and certain destruction. Jake watched the tactical display as weapon. Systems on both sides began charging for battle. "Unknown human vessel, this is Admiral Crix of the Saurian Confederation Fleet." A harsh reptilian voice crackled over the communications. "You are ordered to withdraw immediately. We will destroy the enemy ship in 60 seconds. Jake opened the channel to respond. "Admiral Crix, this is Commander Morrison. I am conducting first contact negotiations with the Fenrir. Do not fire." Pause followed, then Admiral Crix's voice returned, filled with disbelief and anger. "First contact? Morrison, those creatures have killed millions of beings across the galaxy. Stand down immediately or be considered hostile." On the other communication channel, Grimfang growled low in his throat. "The reptile speaks of death. Our bioweapons are ready. Shall we destroy them before they can fire?" Jake found himself caught between two forces, each ready to annihilate the other. The Meridian fleet saw only the galaxy's most feared killers. The Fenrir saw only another threat to their survival. Neither side understood what the other truly was. "Amy, can you put me on both channels at once?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir, but Commander, what are you planning?" Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment that would either save 50 million lives or end his own. "Admiral Crix, Grimfang, listen to me carefully. What I'm about to propose has never been attempted in galactic history. You have 30 seconds before we open fire." Admiral Crix warned. Grimfang's pack members were visible on screen now, massive creatures preparing for battle. "Speak quickly, human." Jake looked directly at Grimfang on the main screen. "I challenge you to single combat." The silence that followed was complete. Even the background hum of ship systems seemed to pause. Amy stared at Jake as if he had announced plans to fly into a star. "Commander, you can't be serious," Ben whispered. "That thing is 3 times your size with claws that can cut through metal." Grimfang leaned forward, his yellow eyes studying Jake with new interest. "You would fight me? A small human against a Fenrir Alpha? Not to the death," Jake clarified. "To establish who has the right to speak for their people. In your culture, the strongest leads the pack. If I win, you listen to my proposal. If you win, we'll withdraw and you can face the fleet." Admiral Crix's voice erupted over the communicator. "Morrison, you're insane. Even if you survive, we will not negotiate with those monsters." Jake kept his eyes on Grimfang. "Do you accept my challenge?" The Fenrir Alpha was quiet for a long moment. Around him, other pack members were making sounds that might have been discussion or argument. Finally, Grimfang nodded slowly. "No one has ever challenged me without weapons or armor. Your courage is either great or your mind is broken. Either way, I accept. We will fight in your ship's cargo bay." Amy grabbed Jake's arm. "Sir, this is suicide. Let me go instead." "No," Jake replied firmly. "This only works if it's me. I'm the one who made contact. I'm the one who has to prove humans are different." 30 minutes later, Jake stood in the cargo bay wearing only his regular uniform. Across from him, Grimfang appeared even more massive in person. The creature had to duck his head to fit through the airlock. and his claws scraped against the metal floor as he moved. The entire bridge crew watched through the security cameras while both fleets maintained their standoff positions. Amy had her hand on the weapon controls, ready to fire if Grimfang killed Jake. Admiral Crix had given them 5 minutes before resuming the attack. "You are smaller than I expected," Grimfang rumbled, studying Jake with predatory eyes. "This will be over quickly." Jake circled slowly, remembering everything he had learned about wolves from his grandfather's stories. Size isn't everything. Speed and intelligence count for more. Grimfang charged without warning, moving faster than something that large should be able to move. Jake dove to the side, rolling behind the supply crate as massive claws slashed through. The air where he had been standing, the Fenrir Alpha spun around, his yellow eyes locked on Jake. "You run well for prey?" "I'm not running," Jake replied, moving carefully around the cargo containers. "I'm thinking." Grimfang charged again, this time anticipating Jake's dodge. But instead of diving away, Jake dropped to the floor and rolled between the creature's legs, coming up behind him. Before Grimfang could turn, Jake grabbed a cargo cable and whipped it around the Fenrir's ankle. The massive creature stumbled but didn't fall. He swiped backward with his claws, forcing Jake to release the cable and jump away. But Jake had learned something important. Grimfang was fast and strong, but his size made him less agile in tight spaces. For the next several minutes, Jake used the cargo bay like a maze, staying behind containers and using the environment to his advantage. He couldn't match Grimfang's strength, but he could outthink him. When Grimfang charged around a corner, Jake was ready. He had rigged a cargo net to drop from the ceiling. The heavy mesh tangled around the Fenrir's head and shoulders, momentarily blinding him. Jake seized the opportunity. Instead of trying to hurt Grimfang, he jumped onto the creature's back and wrapped his arms around the thick neck. Not to choke, but to hold on and demonstrate that he wasn't afraid, Grimfang thrashed, trying to throw Jake off, but the human held tight. Gradually, the Fenrir's struggle slowed. Jake could feel the moment when Grimfang realized what was happening. "You could have tried to hurt me when I was tangled," Grimfang said quietly. "You could have used weapons. But you chose to show dominance without causing pain." Jake released his hold and stepped back as Grimfang removed the cargo net. The two stood facing each other, both breathing hard but neither seriously injured. "In my pack," Grimfang continued, "strength is respected, but wisdom is valued more. You have shown both? You have also shown mercy?" The massive creature slowly lowered his head in a gesture that was unmistakably submission. "You have earned the right to speak." Jake felt a surge of relief and accomplishment, but he knew the hardest part was still ahead. Through the cargo bay speakers, Admiral Crix's voice was demanding an explanation. "Grimfang," Jake said, "your people need a home. My people need to stop living in fear of yours. I think we can help each other, but first we need to convince two fleets not to start a war." The Fenrir Alpha raised his head, yellow eyes gleaming with something that might have been hope. "Speak your proposal, Human Alpha. My pack will listen." Jake activated his communicator, knowing that both fleets were monitoring the frequency. "Admiral Crix, this is Commander Morrison. I'm transmitting coordinates for a conference location. I believe we can solve the Fenrir threat permanently, but it requires both sides to hear what I have to say." "You're asking me to negotiate with killers," Admiral Crix replied coldly. "I'm asking you to negotiate with refugees," Jake corrected. "There's a difference, and that difference might save the galaxy," Grimfang nodded approvingly. "You speak wisdom, Alpha Morrison, but will the reptiles listen?" Jake looked at the tactical display showing 20 warships ready to destroy them. We're about to find out." The journey to Nexus Prime took 3 days, with the UES Horizon traveling between two fleets that still watched each other with suspicion. Admiral Crix had agreed to the conference only after Jake transmitted detailed scans showing that the Fenrir bioship contained families, not just warriors. The images of Fenrir cubs playing in garden areas had shocked the reptilian commander into silence. Jake spent those 3 days learning everything he could about Fenrir culture. Grimfang proved to be a patient teacher, explaining how their society worked around pack structure and family bonds. The more Jake learned, the more similarities he found between humans and Fenrir. "We raise our young together," Grimfang explained as they sat in the Horizons meeting room. "The strongest protect the weakest. The wise guide the foolish. These are the old ways from before the Great Fire." Amy worked frantically to prepare their presentation for the Galactic Council. She had compiled data showing how Fenrir bioships could transform dead worlds into living ecosystems. Lisa had discovered that Fenrir technology was actually designed for creation, not destruction. "Look at these readings," Lisa said, showing Jake her analysis. "Their bioweapons aren't really weapons at all. They're terraforming tools. What we saw as destruction was actually them trying to harvest resources and modify environments." Ben had been working with Fenrir healers, learning about their medical knowledge. They know things about biology that we're only beginning to understand. Their healing techniques could revolutionize medicine throughout the galaxy. But not all of Grimfang's pack accepted the new alliance. A younger Fenrir named Bloodclaw had been challenging Grimfang's decisions since Jake earned his position as Alpha. The tension was growing worse as they approached Nexus Prime. "You follow a human," Bloodclaw snarled during one heated discussion that Jake could hear through the ship's communications. "You bow to a creature half your size who cannot even hunt proper prey." Grimfang's voice remained calm but firm. "Alpha Morrison defeated me in fair combat. He showed mercy when he could. Have shown cruelty. These are the marks of a true leader." "He is weak," Bloodclaw replied. "When we reach this council, he will try to make us slaves to other species. Better to die fighting than live as pets." Jake knew that Bloodclaw's challenge would have to be addressed before they reached the council chambers. A divided pack would undermine everything they were trying to accomplish. On the morning they arrived at Nexus Prime, Jake found Grimfang staring out at the massive space station that housed the Galactic Council. The structure was enormous, with docking bays that could hold ships from hundreds of different species. "I have never seen so many different kinds of beings in one place," Grimfang said quietly. "For centuries we have lived alone among the stars. This is ... overwhelming." "They're all afraid of you," Jake replied honestly. "Some species have lost entire colonies to Fenrir attacks. Convincing them to trust you won't be easy." Grimfang nodded. "Fear is a weapon that cuts both ways. We made them afraid, but their fear made us outcasts. Perhaps it is time to try a different path." The docking process took hours because of security concerns. Council forces wanted to board the Fenrir bioship to ensure it carried no weapons. But Grimfang refused to allow armed soldiers into his pack's home. Finally, Jake suggested a compromise. Unarmed medical and scientific personnel could conduct the inspection. Dr. Carter was among the inspection team, and he returned with reports that amazed everyone. "It's not a ship," he told Jake. "It's a traveling city. They have schools, hospitals, workshops, even art galleries. These people have created an entire civilization inside that vessel." When they finally entered the council chambers, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. Delegates from dozens of species stood up and began shouting. Many demanded that the Fenrir be destroyed immediately. Others simply fled the chamber in terror. The Saurian representative pointed an accusing claw at Grimfang. "Those creatures destroyed 3 of our colonies. They killed thousands of our people. How dare you bring them here?" A crystalline delegate's voice chimed like broken glass. "The Fenrir are a plague upon the galaxy. They must be eliminated before they spread further." Jake stood in the center of the chamber with Grimfang beside him. The massive Fenrir Alpha said nothing, but his presence dominated the room. When Jake finally spoke, his voice carried clearly through the chaos. 300 years ago, the Fenrir homeworld was destroyed," Jake began. 5,000 survivors were forced to flee in bioships, becoming nomads with no place to call home. Everything you call attacks were actually desperate attempts to gather resources needed for survival. The vegan delegates' multiple voices spoke in harmony. "Pretty words cannot bring back the dead." "You're right," Jake agreed. "Nothing can undo the deaths that have occurred. But we can prevent future deaths by addressing the real problem." The Fenrir don't attack because they enjoy killing. They attack because they're starving refugees. He activated a holographic display showing uninhabitable worlds throughout the galaxy. There are thousands of dead planets that no one wants. Worlds with the right size and composition but no atmosphere or surface water. Worlds that the Fenrir bioships could transform into living ecosystems. Murmurs filled the chamber as delegates considered the implications. The Human Council representative stood up. Are you suggesting we give them planets? I'm suggesting we give them the chance to create planets, Jake replied. Fenrir biotechnology can terraform dead worlds in months instead of centuries. In exchange, they provide security services and share their technological knowledge. Bloodclaw had been growing more agitated throughout the presentation. Finally, he could contain himself no longer. This is madness, he roared, stepping forward. We are warriors, not farmers. We take what we need. We do not beg for scraps. The chamber erupted in panic as the young Fenrir challenged both Grimfang and Jake. Security forces reached for their weapons, but Jake held up his hand to stop them. Bloodclaw, Grimfang said with quiet authority, you challenge our Alpha's wisdom. This cannot be permitted. Then I challenge him directly, Bloodclaw snarled, his claws extending. If he is truly fit to lead our pack, let him prove it again. Jake felt the weight of every eye in the chamber. The success or failure of the entire peace proposal might depend on how he handled this moment. He looked at Grimfang, who nodded slightly, then back at Bloodclaw. I accept your challenge, Jake said calmly, but not here and not alone. Grimfang, will you stand with me? The old Alpha's eyes widened in surprise, then gleamed with approval. It would be my honor, Alpha Morrison. For the first time in galactic history, the Council chambers would witness cooperation between species instead of domination. The real test was just beginning. The Council chamber was moved to a larger arena to accommodate what would become the most watched event in galactic history. Representatives from every major species gathered to witness a human and a Fenrir Alpha fight alongside each other against a challenger from their own pack. Jake stood beside Grimfang in the center of the arena floor. Across from them, Bloodclaw paced like a caged predator, his claws scraping against the metal floor. The young Fenrir was nearly as large as Grimfang, but moved with the reckless energy of someone who had never tasted defeat. You fight together? Bloodclaw sneered. The human hides behind Grimfang like a cub behind its mother. Jake stepped forward. We fight as partners. That's what this whole proposal is about. Different species working together instead of destroying each other. The challenge began without ceremony. Bloodclaw charged straight at Jake, clearly intending to eliminate the smaller opponent first. But Grimfang intercepted the attack, meeting Bloodclaw claw to claw in a collision that shook the arena floor while the two Fenrir grappled. Jake circled around to Bloodclaw's flank. He had learned from his fight with Grimfang that direct confrontation was pointless. Instead, he looked for opportunities to disrupt Bloodclaw's balance and timing. When Bloodclaw broke away from Grimfang and spun to face Jake, the human was ready. He dove low, sliding between Bloodclaw's legs and tangling a cable around the creature's ankles. Bloodclaw stumbled, giving Grimfang the opening he needed to pin the younger Fenrir to the ground. Yield, Grimfang commanded, his claws at Bloodclaw's throat. Bloodclaw's yellow eyes burned with fury, but he could not escape Grimfang's hold. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded his submission. Jake helped both Fenrir to their feet. Instead of showing triumph, he extended his hand to Bloodclaw. Your strength and passion are exactly what our alliance needs. But they have to be directed toward building, not destroying. Bloodclaw stared at the offered hand for a long moment before grudgingly accepting it. You fight with honor, Human Alpha. I do not understand your ways, but I will not challenge them again. The council delegates buzzed with amazed conversation. Never before had they seen Fenrir submit to outside authority, much less work cooperatively. With another species, the crystalline delegate spoke first. This demonstration is impressive, but it does not address our fundamental concerns. How do we know the Fenrir will honor any agreement? Jake turned to address the full assembly. Because we're not asking them to change their nature. We're asking, them to use their nature for construction instead of destruction. Fenrir are pack hunters and protectors. Give them territory to protect and people to care for, and they'll defend both with their lives. Admiral Crick stood up from the Saurian section. What you propose is unprecedented. Granting territory and resources to a species that has been our enemy for centuries. They were never really our enemy, Jake replied. They were refugees doing whatever they had to do to survive. The question is, do we want to keep fighting them forever, or do we want to solve the problem? The debate continued for hours. Some delegates remained convinced that the Fenrir were too dangerous to trust. Others were intrigued by the potential benefits of the terraforming technology. The Human Council was split, with some members supporting Jake's proposal and others viewing it as too risky. Finally, the Meridian System representative proposed a compromise. A trial program. 1 Fenrir pack, 1 uninhabitable world, closely monitored by Council observers. If successful, we consider expanding the program. The vote was close. 847 in favor, 823 against, with 156 abstentions. It was barely enough to authorize the trial, but it was enough. Jake was assigned to oversee the project, with Amy as his deputy and Lisa as chief science officer. The world chosen was Barron's Edge, a planet with the right size and gravity but no atmosphere or surface. Water. The terraforming process took 8 months. Jake lived on the Fenrir bioship during that time, working alongside Grimfang's pack as they slowly transformed the dead world. The bioships released specialized organisms that began converting rock and mineral deposits into soil. Atmospheric processors created breathable air, while water extractors pulled moisture from underground sources. But the real transformation was in the relationship between humans and Fenrir. Working side by side, they learned to respect each other's abilities and overcome their differences. Human technology proved useful for precision work, while Fenrir's strength and endurance handled the heavy construction. The crisis that tested their partnership came in the 6th month. A fleet of space pirates, attracted by reports of the isolated terraforming operation, attacked the system. They expected to find easy prey in the form of a few scientists and workers. Instead, they encountered a coordinated defense by both species. Jake's tactical planning combined with Fenrir combat prowess proved devastating to the attackers. More importantly, when the pirates surrendered, the joint force chose to capture rather than kill them, showing that the partnership valued mercy as well as strength. By the end of the 8th month, Barron's Edge had been transformed into a lush, habitable world with forests, grasslands, and clear rivers. The transformation was so complete that council inspectors could hardly believe it. Was the same planet? The success led to the expansion of the program throughout 12 sectors? Jake received a promotion to admiral and was given command of the Fenrir Integration Initiative. Grimfang became his co-commander, the first non-human to hold such a position in galactic military history. Amy took command of the first joint human-Fenrir exploration vessel, tasked with finding new worlds suitable for terraforming. Ben established an intraspecies medical school that combined human and Fenrir healing knowledge. Lisa continued her research into bioship technology, making discoveries that revolutionized galactic science. Other Fenrir packs emerged from hiding throughout the galaxy, eager to join the program that offered them homes instead of endless wandering. The creatures that had once terrorized entire sectors became their most dedicated protectors and builders. 5 years after that first desperate conversation in the asteroid belt, Jake stood on the observation deck of New Terra, the 5th world, transformed by the partnership program. Below him, human and Fenrir children played together in gardens that had been lifeless rock just 2 years earlier. Grimfang joined him at the viewing window, now showing gray in his fur but still proud and strong. You were right, Alpha Morrison. There was a third choice after all. Jake smiled as he watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors that no artist could have imagined. The galaxy that once feared the vicious wolves now depended on them, and the bond forged between two unlikely species had changed the course of galactic civilization forever. The wolves had found their way home at last.